And I need to turn on the audio,
Seems important.
and we're good to go.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday, October 9th, 7:31, and this is the regular monthly Cultural Arts Commission meeting. My name is Neil B. Smith, and I'm the chair of the Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission. And I will start this meeting off, as I always do, by kicking it over to Porter to read some things, some notes.
Well, and because we have nobody on Zoom, there is no reason for me to read anything.
All right, sounds
So I'll
good.
turn it back to you.
Skip the thing. All right, then I'll move on to our roll call, starting with Marlo,
Present.
and then Alicia,
Present.
and then Monique,
Present.
and Kelly,
Present.
and Matthew.
Present.
And Tim let us know in advance that he wouldn't be able to attend. But we do have a quorum, so we can make all sorts of really impactful recommendations. Next, we will move on to approving the minutes from the September 11th Cultural Arts Commission meeting. I don't know if anybody has a chance to look over those, if anybody has any complaints or compliments to the folks that put those together. If so, let me know. If not, looking for a motion to approve them.
So made.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Can I get a second?
A second.
Oh, both Kelly and Monique simultaneously seconded. We can go with Kelly for that one. And then I will go through the roll call once more to approve, starting with Marlo,
Approve.
and then Alicia,
Approve.
and then Monique,
Approve.
and then Kelly,
Approve.
and Matthew.
Approve.
And I shall also approving the September 11th Cultural Arts Commission meeting minutes unanimously. Moving right along, we have agenda item C, which is public comment. Porter already mentioned there's nobody joining us online, and the room is very calm and quiet. It doesn't seem like there's anybody here. There are those pillars, though, so you never know. There could be someone hiding behind them. But if anybody has any public comments they'd like to make, go ahead and do so now. Hearing none, we can move right into our actual agenda items, starting with number 1, which is policy review. Porter, I believe you have some stuff you want to pull
Yeah,
up.
as I mentioned, so our first meeting was kind of scripted by the new structure, and we're still in that nebulous state to some degree. Those who've been on the board know that we've done mural reviews, and, you know, we have our programs, which we'll also talk about, and we're budgeted for next year for the same programs. So all that's there, but currently, the only policy that we are under, as I understand it, beyond the 4 other policies for all the boards and commissions, is, if you go to this page, you scroll down until you find Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission, description here, everything here, and then the only policy that still exists is our public art program policy, which is resolution number 7070, which I mentioned last time we met, is a long-standing, very visionary policy when it was written in 1986. But because it's a resolution and because it says the city commission may annually set aside through bond or other normal budgetary procedures an amount not to exceed 2% of the cost of all capital improvements. So this is tied to the city's capital improvement plan and capital improvement budget, which requires bricks and mortar. So it can't be used for programs and things. It has been implemented sporadically because of that may. So when budgets are tight, this often doesn't happen. The most recent projects were the police project and Fire Station 1. The library has a beautiful project from years ago. So there's some great projects, but it's very sporadic as to when it's been actually implemented and approved by the commission. So just for awareness, this is here. And other than that, I'm not crystal clear, as I mentioned too. Nobody's given me specific direction on this board. This commission is unique because you have money, you have funding. And we have the programs. Actually, I could probably jump into that. I guess they tie together. So then this is the 2025 budget. So we have $20,000 budgeted for the outdoor downtown sculpture exhibition. The community arts grants is budgeted at $70,000. However, I've been directed to take money from this grant fund and the TGT grant fund to help support preparations for World Cup in 2026. So they're starting to look at what are we going to do? How big a deal is this going to be? So that's there. And then we have $6,000 for the Phoenix Awards, and then miscellaneous is used for, I have different memberships with like Americans for the Arts, that type of thing, and also we use it for food for some of our events, and if we need it for anything else. So this is how we've typically broken out the outdoor downtown sculpture exhibition. The community arts grants speak for themselves, the Phoenix Awards. So for those who haven't been on the board, we've been staggering the Phoenix Awards. So this year, we're actually selecting an artist who will make the awards, and he's getting paid $6,000. Next year, we have $6,000 then to spend on the awards ceremony itself. And we need to get on track with that we'll do nominations and that type of thing. Monique attended last year, as many did, was it last year? It was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. I received an
gosh,
award
it's already
for
2 years,
the
yeah.
Indigenous Community
Yeah,
Scholars.
no, that was a beautiful ceremony. It was
Yeah,
great.
it was awesome.
Great group.
Very cool.
So that's what that's for. And this is just a placeholder. This is not actually real numbers. And there are no public art projects currently scheduled. So this has been approved as part of the City Commission's budget for 2025. So anyway, I just want to get it in front of you all because according to the new policies, while there is sort of a standard bylaw for all the boards and commissions, we're sort of up in the air as to what policies should you all be or do you want to be recommending to the City Commission. So this isn't an action thing tonight, but just to convey this information to you all of starting to think about those types of things. And I have to get clarity, honestly, because I don't know how much that changes the Art Commission's responsibility, because there was an ordinance that defined what this board did. The new ordinance isn't specific as to what this board does, because it's a standard for all boards and commissions. So, and I guess what I could do is figure out how to share some of those older policies just for your awareness, if nothing else, which would be hopefully helpful. So that kind of combined these two things, but just wanted to bring you up to speed on that as we are still navigating these new waters and things.
Is that budget up for discussion at this moment, or is that later in the agenda?
Let's see. I mean, as far as the budget for 2025, or
Just the reduction in that community arts grant,
yeah, I think
$15,000.
Porter was smart to touch on that as how it ties into. Obviously, the budget is reflective of the policies that we have used in the past and what maybe we could continue with. So those two things tie together. So I feel like if anybody wants to discuss the issue of reviewing past policies and the budget right now, I think we can discuss both those at the same time.
I'd be interested in talking about the budget. That $15,000 rejection, I think, is painful, and I think our mission to include more grantees, and I know equity is important to us. To me, that is contradictory to reducing our community arts grants, and I feel like that's literally the most important thing we do as a body. So I would be in favor if we're 100% stuck with this budget. You know, if is this a lock in stone kind of thing? This is actually our budget now. There's no going back.
So you have $97,000 approved in the 2025 budget. You can change your programs.
Okay, so we can't change the amounts, but we can
You can't
shuffle
change the
around.
amount, but
Yeah.
you can shuffle around if you want to, yes.
I would highly recommend shuffling around.
Love that.
I would propose taking that 15 from ODSE or Phoenix Award, because I really believe in the community arts grants, and those literally trickle down to contract artists, people who make their living by being artists.
Or
So-
creating space for artists.
Exactly. And so I'm very passionate about that, and I would love to see that 15,000 come back to us.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, 100%.
I have a question. So with the Phoenix Awards, the 6,000, and I don't know much about it, but not the artist, but the event. How does that 6,000 usually? It seems like a,
So, yeah, good,
That's where I'm like,
it's a good
that's
question.
maybe
So
some extra-
historically, it was 3,000.
okay,
And that was just not enough
yeah.
to really do justice for the artists. And so happily, after COVID, that shifted and we were able to get more funding. So we now ironically have possibly more than we really need.
Does that usually go to like catering and facility or?
Catering is the biggest cost and, because we usually get wine donated. So,
DMB Smith, we don't usually get wine donated, but we usually do have,
Okay.
we do have wine generously offered at a greatly reduced rate.
I'll say that might be a spot.
How do you
where-
choose the caterer?
there's a committee, well, I don't know about committees, but historically, we've had a committee that handled that whole event.
Okay.
And then they
Got
would
you.
determine
We were
catering
talking
and
about
that type of
committees
thing.
last time.
Happily, Mary Doveton was very involved in that the last few years. We used to do it at the Art Center, and then Mary got involved when she came on the Art Commission, and obviously, they have a lot of experience doing events at Theater Lawrence, so that's where we did the event.
Very
And she
cool.
handled the
Yeah.
catering and all the other things.
So it's not always at the Theater Lawrence?
It doesn't have to be,
Oh.
no. So that's another option, is that we can move it too.
Oh.
DMB Smith, I will go ahead and agree that I feel like $6,000 for putting on the event is a very generous amount. And, we increased the budget on some of these things previously. Porter mentioned that it used to be 3,000. And so, and for us, increasing the community arts grants, essentially doubling the amount for the community arts grants was a very welcome change. And I feel like having the Phoenix Award amount go from 3,000 to 6,000 just kind of happened. But ultimately, I don't know if there were necessarily any complaints with having it at 3,000 prior to that. So I think, especially given this is a special circumstance with World Cup, it's not going to happen every year or every decade. I don't know that much about sports, but I assume that's the case. So I think definitely shifting some from Phoenix Awards. I also think that maybe as a group we could just look at putting on an event of the caliber we want and figure out like what is it really actually a reasonable number to do that, because the current $6,000 figure is kind of arbitrary based on ramifications of other things, not necessarily a number that's born out of what we've decided is an actual appropriate amount to spend on the event. The one question I had about with the outdoor sculpture exhibition, or the temporary public art exhibition, did I get it right? It's potentially the new moniker. If we take money out of that pool, which I'm not entirely against, but is that also not diverting money away from working artists, some of which are in our community?
I think a lot of those are non-local artists, and so I'm okay with reducing the number of artists that are participatory in that, and we usually get a good handful of local.
Well, yeah, and that was my question too. I mean, is it a matter of having fewer artists or artists receiving smaller amounts? What would make more sense?
I'd go fewer artists, so they get the same
We
stipend.
usually, like in the past, is 9 about how many? That seems like
We've
a big number. but-
been between, more, typically it was 8 or 9.
Okay.
And that's generally what we do.
I agree with that. Reducing the artists, and even in that reduction, I'm always gonna say, pay the artist a little bit more, because $1,750 isn't a lot for
No,
creating a
yeah.
sculpture.
That's
gonna be out.
supplies. That's not your time. That's not,
I would recommend that, but.
yeah.
The Phoenix Awards, I just looked up the receipts from last year, because I have all that tallied, was $3,400 approximately, so that's about what it cost to do it
We can
last
reduce
year.
that.
Reduce
Yeah.
that. I think you can,
Yeah.
you can, I feel like, I don't know how much things cost, but I think you can
Yeah.
throw a
We'll
good,
figure it out.
a good shindig with it.
DMB Smith, well, I certainly agree with reducing some of the Phoenix Award allocations, and I do think that, I do agree. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of the temporary public art exhibition participants, they're not local, which, really, it does, ultimately have to be more of a focus for us, and having a reduced number there is definitely somewhat regrettable. Having more is better, and paying them more is obviously great, but I do agree with Marla's point that the community arts grants is the most important thing we do. So I I don't know, to me, I feel like any amount that we can make up in that difference is great. I feel like if we don't make up the full 15,000, let's say we get up to the point where it's, we add $10,000 back into that, and we don't, not necessarily getting it right back to where it was, to me, that's still an important, meaningful thing. So I think we just need to kind of figure out what amounts we might want to recommend.
Just looking at this and doing math off the top of my head, if you had just cut the sculptures to 5 artists and the Phoenix Awards to 4 instead of 6, that's 9,000 right there. And I mean, I don't know if you're going to get back to that full 15, but 9's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I just feel like this cut is painful, and I
Yeah.
feel like I'm all about the World Cup. I think it's great, but I feel like the fact that it comes from our budget
Right.
makes me upset, and I don't like that aspect of. I know we have that mission given to us from the commission to get more grants out to more people, and then having that reduced, I feel like is so contradictory and antithetical. So I think just stating that for the minutes and just being really
Yes.
transparent about that. I don't want that to happen again. And I
Yeah.
feel like, I know the transient guest tax is also going to be hit. Porter, do you have the amount on that? How much they're being reduced?
So we were just directed to take funds from those two to add up to $15,000 or to $50,000. So my thought was, community arts grants are 70,000, which is obviously smaller than 150. So we just landed on 15,000 from that, and then 35,000 from the TGT grants.
Yeah, and that's also a great impact because so many arts organizations depend on those, and they feed contract artists locally as well. So I just feel like I'm all about the World Cup. I think it's a great ask, but I'm not in favor of it coming from the artists.
Not when it's hurting our own people. Like, we're already scooting over, moving out of the way, fixing, our space to cater to you being here. So it hurts even worse when we're like, and we'll take that too.
Agreed.
B. Smith, I have 2 thoughts just about the whole thing. Well, maybe 3. I mean, I agree. I also don't think it's preferable for. I mean, this is not like best case scenario looking at the programs that we hope to deliver. I do think that there is some value in being a team player, but I do think that one thing that comes out of this, I mean, I think that we should encourage people in our community to, and for us to try and continue having conversations about when there is, a shortfall or a budget gap, like why is it that arts are always, first on the chopping block? Or if we want to be a community that's known for prioritizing the arts, then that means that it can't be the thing that gets cut when we need to fill gaps. So I think that's something that we can, as a body, continue to kind of keep in our discussions. The other thing I will say is that, $15,000 from our budget this next year obviously is not great, but I think that we can remember that, and maybe in future conversations, since there won't be a World Cup every year, and because World Cup will have some very positive effects on the transient guest tax fund, maybe in the future we can recommend, throughout the pandemic we had a situation where funding was way down, and then after the fact we have sort of increased amounts to try and revitalize some of the things that weren't getting funded. So I mean, I feel like this could potentially be a similar situation where in the following year, after the TGT fund is potentially going to see so much an influx of funds, we could ask that this reduction be taken into account, and then maybe we have an additional allocation. The projects and the initiatives and the things that are happening in 2026 are not necessarily the same ones that would be funded in 2025. So it's not like we're actually like really repaying it to the folks who are potentially missing out. But I still think it's a worthwhile thing to remember and maybe try and include that in a recommendation, just to make sure the arts community like sees that the city is really does care and prioritize them. So.
Well, and you and I had talked about, since things like the Christmas parade and Busker Fest and Pride Fest are things that are always going to be here. why is that not coming out of the city budget instead of the arts budget? Why are we funding those
Yeah,
things
that's
that are
fair.
going to happen anyway? And, maybe we make a recommendation that's a city project, it's their constant, and we are trying to find new things. I don't know.
I love that idea, and I think we've circled around that before with signature events. And so I think that makes so much sense because that kind of gets to the equity question, because you have signature events that are happening every year, and now you have this pool for new events. And I think it also would allow more opportunity for mentorship, because I know we have that soft deadline for community arts grants. If we extended that soft deadline, we're able to work with people on their applications, give a little bit more time. I think that would be a strong way to go. And then we don't have the admin of doing those signature events. We're just doing the arts events, the new ones.
Daniel B. Smith, I feel like there is an opportunity here where we could pivot a little bit, and Porter, you might be able to help us out, just because looking at the policy review and talking about the resolution that we have, 7070, and then also talking about this idea of taking some of these reoccurring, reliable, expected events and shifting those over, or making it so that that is not coming out of the community arts grants. Do we want to touch on the comprehensive plan at all? Because I feel like in there it has some bullet point items, and this idea, as well as the idea of taking the resolution and changing it to an ordinance, are both things that are included as potential changes or that are in there.
Yeah, the master plan is still in process as far as getting it through an editing process and getting it, so we hope to bring it to the city commission. Hopefully, we're shooting for October, but we've had some other challenges, so maybe November, so that's something we could talk about as well. I think we also have to be clear on what's outlined here. And because you are a policy board, and it's just so easy to get into the numbers, but we have to remember the city commission is in charge of the city's budget. So that's part of the challenge here and this has been outlined here more clearly, and I can never remember which document it's in, forgive me, but it has, advisory board members have the following duties: ensure that a quorum is met, all that, and then the norms. So this is, these are what all the advisory boards are being asked to do. Sorry, this was the norms. Oh, here it is. Members do not have budget responsibilities or oversight responsibilities. That's the obligation of the governing board, the city manager, and city staff. So it isn't really on your plate to have to worry about the numbers. I hear what you're saying. Certainly you are residents of Lawrence. You can access the city commission. You can also generate advocacy in other ways. I think the Art Center does that and other things. So that's definitely feasible. But then it's also what policies does this body think that the city should be either committing to historically or new policies potentially, so.
Yeah, and I think, Daniel B. Smith, both of those things that are potentially contained in the master plan of changing the resolution to an ordinance and also potentially having a policy around signature events. That's not directly looking at the numbers in the budget, but if it is true that if the city was funding those expected signature events, I have no idea how many thousands of dollars of our community arts grants go to those events every year, but that would definitely free up more funding there. So, and it's just good to keep in mind that these things that we're maybe talking about being good ideas are written on a piece of paper as good ideas. And
So two things. One is the master plan, but here I am at the Parks, Recreation, Arts, and Culture webpage. And so I want to remind you of something that exists that I think is, while it's not a policy per se, it's certainly a document that has value because we went through a very, a thorough process in developing this. So and this is more about just possible ideas and that type of thing. So the citywide cultural plan is here. This was done finished in 2016, and it's a good plan. It actually is a really good plan. And we've never really, because of COVID and other things, we never really got to delve into it as much as I think I wanted to, I know that. But when you scroll through this whole document, there are also implementation matrices that we can look at that happily align very well, I think, to the city's strategic plan. So this is the way it's built. There's different outcomes. I'm just going through it very quickly, but I really encourage you guys to look at this and to see if there's things, you all have interest areas that's part of the reason you're on this board. So to go through this, see where your interest areas might be reflected in this is an opportunity to have that discussion and to start thinking in that way. Hang on, let me get down here. It is really good stuff, but okay. Actually, let me do some, sorry, and let me go back because I know I've done this. Here, the implementation matrix is also set out separately. So there's a vision statement that goes with this, and then there's different goals. A1, balancing the local, which is what you guys just talked about, is how do we benefit our local artists? Keep creative and entrepreneurial people and organizations stimulated with external sources, ideas, and new talent. I'm just going to go through a few of these. So this all exists under that heading. A2 is embrace all, strive for cultural equity and a healthier community through greater collaboration across all sectors. So there's a whole, you see there's a whole host of, and this was all derived from direct community interaction. So there's some valuable stuff in here that we can certainly point to. It's not a policy, but it has some really good recommendations. And then, to Daniel's point, you're testing my abilities to navigate the website. Okay, so with community engagement, as Daniel mentioned, we started the Parks, Recreation, Arts, and Culture Comprehensive Plan last fall, so it's been over a year now. Still in process. These are all the meetings and things that occurred. These are the different implementation recommendations: financial, programmatic, operations and management, and of course, arts and culture. So you can look here. Oh goodness, it's gonna be hard to see, but. So likewise, this was a very comprehensive community engagement process, and the team met individually, interviewed, I think, 30 people. Plus we had group meetings, roundtable meetings, different things. And so they gleaned their information from that. And so this is their implementation matrix with priority level. So, and to Daniel's point, so these are the things: strengthen the presence of the indigenous community within the city through arts and culture collaborations. Formalize the Lawrence Public Art Program by advancing the thrice reaffirmed resolution, which was originally passed in 1986, to an ordinance and implement the public art policy that they crafted as well. So that's a policy, timing of which is a question when budgets are so tight. So anyway, these all exist. These are all things that we can pull from, and things to think about moving forward with and developing policy potentially for that purpose as well. And of course, funding becomes part of those conversations. I could send you the links to all these, but you saw also, this is easy if you go to the main city page. You'll see right at the top, community engagement. You click on that, you scroll down, you find that one, and there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, B. Smith. So for the time being, obviously there are the programs that we have administered for as long as I've been involved in this process. But those, and we have those set for 2025 with the amounts listed, but those are not included in any specific policy as to the function of the board. So for us, what we're being asked to do is decide essentially how we want to move forward. Potentially with the creation of new policies, deciding, how we're going to continue acting. And I'm curious to hear if anybody has any thoughts. The previous version of this body talked a lot about the transition, and there was never too much discussion as far as necessarily overhauling the programs we have, but obviously there is room for innovation and things. So I'm curious. I don't think we're going to decide and finalize any of it this evening, but I'm curious just to hear people's opinions on the programs as they are, whether we think they should continue or whether people want to take a crack at changing things up.
Seems like a great retreat question. You know, like we would have the time to prepare for it and then maybe come to the table with a longer meeting where we don't have immediate concerns on
Where
the
we can
table.
allocate more time to that specific topic.
Do we know, are we doing a retreat in January? I can't remember. I know we talked about it last time, but
Well, again, a whole new day started in September. So you can do your retreat. Now, we do have to do certain things, but technically now we are on a different schedule because we restarted September, so we're on that September calendar. So each September at this point, we would elect a new, then the only thing that includes is electing a chair, a vice chair, sort of the formal aspect of things. So you guys can do a retreat anytime you want. I think the retreat has to be public. So we'd have to probably do it in this room, or we could I have to check on that, whether we have to do a retreat. But I think anytime this board meets or any of the others, it has to be in this room.
I did ask the question in my training, the City Commission Advisory Board training, whether it had to be televised, and they said no, it has to be open to the public. So if someone requests a Zoom, you have a Zoom, but you don't need to have recording and all that great stuff.
Right. But it does have to be open to the public.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dina B. Smith, I certainly agree that it is a good, broad topic for retreat. And yeah, it is tricky because, we don't have any specific date for the retreat. I mean, we could try and come up with a potential option during this meeting.
Yeah.
I certainly have January seems easier than December.
I like the January retreat. I thought it was a good time. I feel like we did it like second week of January in the past.
Typically, we did it, did we do it the Sunday before or after usually we did it on a Sunday.
It was a Sunday afternoon.
And often we'd cancel the regular
Yes.
meeting, or we'd make a very short version if we had something we had to review.
Yeah, I thought that
So-
worked well. I just feel like those are so philosophical questions that it would take some thought behind it, where I feel like the immediate concern is circling back to that community arts grants. I liked the idea of doing 5 ODSE artists this year, keeping the amount the same. And then I think we could take those Phoenix Awards down to 3 if we spent 34 last time. I feel like there's great room to reduce.
I agree.
I have a question. Labels and plaques. I'm just interested in, are the plaques for Phoenix
So-
Awards or are they for the ODSE?
You're looking at the outdoor downtown sculpture exhibition.
Oh, I guess it's right under that.
So, that typically, so we get those name plaques printed
Right next to
that
the,
often get stolen, unfortunately.
okay, I was gonna say, I don't know if I've ever really seen those. And
They're
I
out
had
there.
mine on the library. I did not have one of those. Was never
You
meant.
did.
I never
Somebody
did.
They
has
get stolen. It's really
Oh,
frustrating.
interesting. That's where
frankly.
I was wondering. I just wasn't sure.
But printing
what-
and stuff of those, it
I can-
costs upwards of $600-700 typically.
Do you
So,
feel like we need them? Did you feel like if they're going to be stolen?
Maybe coming up with a different way to
What exactly
display
do
or
they look
share.
like? I mean,
Yeah, I
what
don't
is it?
know.
I did awards for years, so I'm just curious what a name plaque, how big is it? What is it? Why is it $1,000?
it's printed on a material that actually can be adhered to the sidewalk, or in our case, because we usually have, what do you call them, curbs. So I don't know if it's still out there, but there was one on this sculpture, but with all the construction, I wouldn't be surprised if it disappeared. So that's something
Maybe
that,
revisiting that.
that was,
Good question.
Yeah.
I figured that was for that, but I was like, I don't remember ever having.
and I
them
would
or
suggest,
seeing them.
you don't have to get into the nitty
I
gritty
know,
of
that's
this.
where my brain
If you just
goes.
direct me as staff, find this, I mean, I like what we did with, I agree that you should do 5 artists. That's $7,000. I think I would agree that $3,000 is probably adequate for the Phoenix Awards. So that's $10,000 right there. And you could cut the plaques or whatever you want to do, but you could also just say, is there a way to shave out another $1,000 or something? And I'd probably figure out a way to do it.
I mean, if the plaques are generally getting stolen, that's kind of the point.
I think of an alternative way. in my
Yes.
brain.
Well, it's mostly for the opening and the initial.
Oh, yeah.
To give the artist credit, what it is it actually has a QR code.
Oh, okay.
So when you see it, you see the artist's name, you actually see an image of what you're looking at, because in
Okay.
my experience, that's often the case, is you have this little plaque and it's like, I don't know what this is for.
Right.
So we do that. And then the QR code takes you to the online map so that you can actually hear from the art. So it's
Oh,
really
okay,
trying to
okay.
promote the art
Sure.
and give people that may be landing on these, unexpectedly, a chance to learn more if they want to.
Okay,
That's the purpose. And some are still out there, but some, yes, do get.
okay.
And I think that raises a good point, because I do love the online presence. So do we need the brochures? I know they're pretty, but maybe that's a great place to cut to and just go all digital on the ODSC this year.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's,
I was thinking if the
I mean,
plaque,
everybody
nobody
has
has
a
brochures
phone.
for anything anymore.
So if you put something on there that's a QR code that links you to all of it, instead of printing up brochure, I mean, seems like an easy fix.
B. Smith, it sounds like everyone is interested in, yeah, I agree, the brochures are also something, going on the walk every year, brochures are nice, but
Reducing some of the stuff that feels like admin and promote, and giving money to artists should be their goal.
And just for us, at least as a baseline, thinking that if we need to cut $15,000, we should cut everything but the artist, the money that's going to the artists first, or at least try to. So it sounds like we have a request of our staff liaison to try and rustle.
Well, and I
up-
will ask you to vote on it, so we probably need to clarify. So at this point, what I'm hearing is reduce the outdoor downtown sculpture exhibition to 5 artists, which frees up $7,000. Drop the printed brochures, which gives us another $2,000. And then cut the Phoenix Awards ceremony budget in half, which gives us $3,000, which is $12,000.
I have a question about cutting the brochures entirely. I mean, if we do this entirely like as an online presence sort of thing, is there still going to need to be some money for design or stuff like that? Or is that just printing costs, that $2,000?
No, the design cost is in there too, which I think is around $400
Okay.
for designing them.
I'm just trying to think of another way to make a plaque. If they're stolen, like what if there was something at the opening that's like made out of wood or something real nice that you can put out. But then I also think if you were visiting town and you saw that piece, granted, the plaques are, I guess, taken sometimes. I would wanna
Ironically,
know
the
what
one for
artist,
Tim
so, like,
O'Brien's piece out in front of the
is still
Phoenix.
there?
I haven't been by there recently, but it was there, and it was partially because it was placed on the side
Sure.
of the concrete, and so that one survived. So it's just hit or miss, and my hope honestly is that they're there for at least the first 6 months or so.
Well, if we're cutting the artists, then that takes, how many, 4 plaques away?
That's a great
That's a good,
point.
yeah.
Then that's 4 plaques that don't need to be made. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm
No, that makes
trying to
sense.
think, where can we,
So just for purposes
know.
of
I'm just
this,
I'm
we
just
could drop that to half.
is that doable? Can you? I
I'm
don't-
sure we can figure out something. So that's $500.
Do we need food and drink for the opening? Like, can we just have everybody bring their own water bottles? Or have Explore Lawrence? How about with that?
Give the 15,000 back.
So $200 there, so that's 700. And just to make it 1,000, I'm sure that I can't remember, and some of this has changed since COVID as well with memberships and that type of thing. So I think it's safe to say that we can drop this to $500. So that's $300.
Is that the office?
The membership subscription
okay.
printing, 300. So that gets you to another 1,000, right? Am I right? 500, 700, yeah, 1,000. So that's 13,000.
DLB Smith, is there any more room, or is 13?
Well,
what you-
what I can do too, so that, at least you know what you've done. The timing, so we met at the roundtable yesterday, and again, this has gotten things thrown out of whack. But one thing I heard loud and clear was, if I go for one grant but don't get that grant, will I have the opportunity to go for the other grant? And historically, the timing would be such that you could make that work. I'm still trying to figure out how that can work. But where I'm going with this is that as we go through that process and I go through this, I may be able to find, other savings and make sure we get it built into that. So minimally, you'll have 13, and I'll see what I can do as far as trying to cut costs in other ways, just organically. So yeah, I would say you don't have to go through, but just to recap, so you're dropping the number of artists, which is $7,000, cutting the labels, plaques budget to $500, dropping the $2,000 from the brochure, from the printed version of the brochures, and then taking the drink budget out to $200. And then the $300 was from this admin cost, and then $3,000 from the Phoenix Awards.
So unless there is any other discussion, which there's always time for more discussion, but I will go ahead, DLB Smith, I will go ahead and look for a motion to approve our request that our wonderful staff liaison Porter reallocates $13,000 from half of the temporary public art exhibition artists, $3,000 from the Phoenix Awards, the funding from the labels and plaques and the brochures, and then $300 from the membership subscription and planning to, total up to $13,000 to then be reallocated to try and help account for the $15,000, which is being reduced from the community arts grants.
Motion to approve.
Great, thank you, Marlo. Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Kelly. I will now do a roll call vote, starting with Marlo.
Approved.
And Alicia,
Approved.
and Monique,
Approved?
and Kelly,
Approved?
and Matthew,
Approved.
and I shall also approve. The motion shall pass unanimously. Thank you for engaging in numbers
Yeah, that was great.
activities.
Okay, thanks. And then, I have also provided, I'll go through this in more detail, the new community arts grants guidelines, which there was discussion last year with the grants about bolstering equity and inclusion. So I've added that aspect. So this is the background on the community arts grants, how they tie back to the unmistakable identity progress indicators, which I can do this, and you can see those. So these are the measures that we use as part of the strategic plan. So these are all built in here. We're not going to hit all of these necessarily, but that's what we're referencing. So I've added equity and inclusion, which is one of the commitment areas on the strategic plan. So here's the strategic plan, and here's equity and inclusion. Fair and impartial delivery of service so that no group is disadvantaged or burdened, along with having inclusive representation and participation for all. And inclusion and racial equity drive the culture of our organization and our community. When we intentionally prioritize race, it can no longer be used to predict life outcomes, and outcomes that are improved for all. we remove systemic barriers to reconcile historic injustices and their continued presence in our work. And they, of course, have progress indicators as well. So that's what that is referring to. And then environmental sustainability is very similar. I won't go through all of it, but it's the same thing, and our commitment to that as well. I said new, but I probably shouldn't because we did this last year. So part of this effort is trying to encourage new grant applicants. So part of that is getting the word out, which is something we're doing as well. So for anybody that hasn't done a grant before or feel real comfortable, they can actually do a preliminary grant and submit it, and then I'll review that and send back information as to what they're doing. So that's available here, and I'm going to do that on a paper form this year because it got really confusing last year with the online form. Then we have the different grant categories. We implemented the community arts mini grants last year, which is $500, which we find can be beneficial. We decided to award 6 artists. And it's just, money for that thing that you can't quite afford as you're trying to figure out how to build your career. So that's been very popular. And then, of course, the community arts grants. Because of the reduction, I was thinking that we should reduce the amount per project. Obviously, you've changed that reduction amount, but that would be a question that stands. What number do you feel like is impactful for a project? And, do you want to adjust that $8,000? This is just what I put in this, and it should be no more than 50% of the total project budget or cost. So that's food for thought. And then I have dates in here that I'm trying to strike for this, although I'm now thinking that the TGT grant program maybe should go first, and then we do this later in the year, because we usually don't approve these until March.
That makes sense.
So maybe I'll switch these, do TGT so the event people know that that's happening, and then if they don't get their TGT grant, they could conceivably, although this is a art project grant and that's an event grant, but it gives them that opportunity. So, and then there's all the other criteria, and in addition to this, what I've done is built into the score sheet, which is what you all will fill out, the actual, so this is what the score sheet looks like. Some of you are familiar. We add all the applicants here. We put the project director's name and last name here, the project title that they're seeking funding for, the start date, the end date, the total project expense, so that's for the whole project, and then how much they request from the Cultural Arts Commission grant. And then scoring-wise, we've set up criteria. And so what I did was I actually took some of the old criteria out because I don't want to have too much criteria. But unmistakable identity, there's the project to exemplify and or help promote Lawrence's unmistakable identity. Let me get this bigger so you guys can see it. Equity, does the project exemplify and or help promote Lawrence's commitment to equity and inclusion, sustainability, community value. So this gets into the community value and part of the cultural plan that highlights what that specified. Project quality, so whatever they're proposing, what's the quality level? And these are all different score, actually most of them are 10 points. Then completeness of the application is 0 to 5, and then reviewer added points. So this is, encouraging anybody reviewing these, if you have insight or something and you say, this is a really top-notch kind of thing, even though it's scoring low, we should consider that. So you have the ability to add that. So that's how I've set this up in alignment with the,
I also want to say about our grant review, just general. Last year being my first time looking at grants, I noticed something, and I understand our time. We only have so much time, but we didn't get in talking about the grants as much. And I know you can sit and talk about all the grants, but I felt like we were, and that's where I know we review them, and that's where we've looked at them, but even very minimal talk on the projects I noticed during it. And I think I was looking forward to that, also being new to the board, not sure with time. I know we can be talking about it for hours, but I just felt like it was something we were just really looking at the numbers, and sometimes I wanted to be like, let's talk a little bit about this. Maybe I want to hear thoughts. And I was new, so not always feeling the most comfortable bringing it up, but maybe that's something to like consider, as I was missing that, like that conversation about it that I feel like we had very minimal, if I'm remembering correctly. So,
We can meet if we want to speak more about it here at any
Yeah.
time we want, right?
Dean Smith, yeah, I mean, we'd have to
Coordinate,
ask board-
obviously,
board
but
to
like, maybe
figure it
we
out.
make the effort to do that, because behind those conversations is going to be the deciding factors of allocating or reallocating funds.
And I will say that, you know, in the past, we had subcommittees who would meet additionally to our monthly meeting, and the Community Arts Grants Subcommittee would meet and discuss some of these things.
okay.
But, you know, with the shift towards trying to have subcommittees essentially behave the same way that the full board functions, as far as meeting here in this room and having it be public, you know, it changes that. We don't have any subcommittees established at the moment. We don't have almost any policies. But if we wanted to, we could have additional meetings in this room with the full body. We could have additional meetings that would be considered a subcommittee if it was only, you know, a few people still in this room and still public. I mean, we could also change things. We could discuss the applications in a meeting and then fill out the rubrics and then discuss the scores.
And maybe there's, I just, last year, not even, it doesn't have to be hours, but maybe I wanted a little bit more talk about it being new, and so I don't know if committee, if that makes sense when we get closer. I was just putting it out there as like, I think that's important.
I did feel last year it was constrained for time, and I think the
Okay.
addition of the mini grants, I felt like we had so much on our plates that
Okay.
night. And so I would be interested in revisiting whether everyone feels the mini grants are effective or not. Like, is it worth that $500 since we're down 2,000? Do we feel like that's something we want to continue doing? Or is that something that we want to roll those 2,000 back into the community arts grants who, you know, contract artists
And
out?
I'd like to see the mini grants be, at least a few of them, if we have 6, go to, I would like to see us reach out to the high schools and give them to a senior, and, you know, and who needs a new camera, and they're planning on going to college for art. Something like that to help them on their path, because I know how expensive all of that stuff is. And
Yeah,
it would be cool for them to learn how to write grants, too.
I will say that we had at least one, I think maybe even 2 of our mini grant applicants last year were high school getting into, you know, early college age, that, which I think does make sense. For that, I feel like one thing that we haven't talked about so far with community arts grants is sort of trying to spread the word. So I think that that's something where, you know, what we really, if we want to see that happening, what we really have to do is try and establish how do we make sure that high schoolers are aware that that's an opportunity.
I would happily take that on.
And it's something last year, I think Marlon, you and I went and talked to the Lawrence Music Alliance. I do think it would be something that would be nice to try and come up with an established list of groups, organizations, you know, schools that we feel like we really want to make sure we loop in. And I think one thing that members of this body could you know, potentially help with is, you know, go to a Lawrence Music Alliance and let them know. You know, as individuals, we can do that sort of thing. But I think that sort of raising awareness, especially if there are groups where we feel like we're never hearing from these people, I feel like trying to get out there can help with that. With the mini grants, kind of feel like since last year we did it for the first time, I feel like if we scuttled it this year, even on even just because of the deficit, the slight deficit we're seeing, I feel like I'd be worried that, I mean, I feel like it would be nice to, since this is the second year we could potentially do it, to do them again, just to like try and keep some consistency with them, so that, especially when it does come to like community awareness. If we did it last year and then we don't do it this year, you know, I don't think it would make it so that nobody would ever apply to them again. But I think doing it again and being consistent with it will help people be aware that it's a thing. I did also want to touch on, Porter, in the draft you did have the maximum out request lowered to 8,000. And I feel like since we've reallocated 13 back to the community arts grants, so the total is now just down 2,000. To me, my inclination would be just to keep the maximum what it has been, again, for the consistency's sake. And I mean, having the community arts grants down $2,000 overall, it is a meaningful decrease, but I don't think we need to necessarily, to me, I don't think we need to shift all of the numbers around to accommodate. If we were down 15, I do think that would make sense, but if we're going back up 13, I think keeping the maximum requests the same makes sense. I don't know if anybody else has any.
Yeah, I feel exactly the opposite. I feel like if we limit it a little bit more, then we can give it to more people. We can spread.
But I mean,
the love a
either
little,
side,
but-
somebody's getting it, right? No matter,
Right, yeah.
so like, I think the mini grants, keeping it what it is, gives more people that are just beginning
I think there's
more of an
accessibility
opportunity,
of, like,
way
writing
more
maybe your
accessibility.
first.
Absolutely.
It's not as scary as like an $8,000, not like
Yeah.
asking for that. But
And I don't think, but if it was set at $10,000, that's nothing stopping us from, informally, hey, we're only going to give $8,000 at the max, if, depending on how many grant applications we have and seem reasonable, that sort of thing. So I think you could put it at 10,000 on the brochure, like you said, for consistency's sake, but, bearing in mind that we, I think, have some sort of basic consensus that we'd want to spread this around more.
Let me provide a little more background. So I appreciate what you said, and that's come up before. So what I was sitting here trying to find, took me a while, was how this works is, how we've done it, is, as I showed you, there's the score sheet. That's the score sheet that each of you would score individually based on your interpretation of the criteria, okay? Then you submit that back to me. So that's a blind scoring process. Comes back to me, I plug your scores into this form. This form was specifically designed, to Alicia's point, to help encourage conversation. So it automatically does the minus or plus standard deviation. So what it does is tell you color-coded wise, yes, the Lawrence Old Fashioned Christmas Parade was scored highest and across the board. So that kind of says, okay, this is a popular event. But some of these get into, why are there red and blue dots here? So it indicates that there's a disparity. It's not across the board. So that was part of the reasoning for this, was there are some things in here, and we always say at the beginning of our things, and I know we said it for this too, if somebody wants to argue that something isn't getting boosted up, and to your point, Matt, so these were not funded at 100%. So to help spread this out, now this is 2022, which I think was because it was out of COVID, they tried to fund everything. So that's an entirely different example, but we use the same score sheet for both the transient guest tax and this program. So just to give you a little more insight, that's part of the desire, is to encourage some kind of dialogue, or just somebody to say, you know what, this is new, whatever, but we should really consider it because of X, Y, or Z. And it's a tough conversation, because you have very popular things that we know draw a community. There are things that, from the TGT perspective, we know fill hotel rooms. So this is part of the challenge of there's not really, everybody has their opinions and their beliefs, but it's not necessarily benefiting the broadest audience. So you have to think about those things as well.
To encourage that conversation, could we separate the mini grants so they're a different timeline? So, because I do remember that night where we did not have time.
Oh, that
it
makes
was a
sense.
lot. It was a lot.
It was a lot to pack in,
that
and we're
makes
trying to get money out to people.
On that note too, I just want to throw this out. We've always had $500 grants. So it's not like, I think what we did was we separated the mini grants to encourage, like you said, it doesn't seem as threatening, although ironically, they filled out the same, basically, application. They didn't have to fill out quite as much because they didn't have a hard budget. So, it's not like we never said you couldn't get a mini grant, it's just now we separated it out.
So could it be a different deadline, different season, so we have a night to talk about mini grants, and then a night to talk about community arts grants?
I guess we could work that into the schedule.
Daniel B. Smith, I'm also wondering if we could have the same application schedule for the mini grants and the regular grants, but then we could review the community arts grants 1 month and then just review the mini grants the next
I like
month.
that.
There'd just be a month later. I mean, the folks who applied for the mini grants would just wait essentially an extra month to find out.
And they're not event-based, they're project-based.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is
Easier.
different, because
Yeah.
Porter, you mentioned that folks could have applied for a $500 grant, years ago, but the reality is that the mini grants are more for a piece of equipment, for an individual, and not a collaborative community project. But, I mean, for me, going back to this draft, my inclination is to try as much as possible, given the unusual circumstance of World Cup, try as much as possible to keep the numbers the same from last year, and then what we can assume they'll be next year, just for the sake of consistency. And since it is the $10,000 is the maximum request, if we do feel like we want to end up actually assigning slightly decreased amounts to make up a 2,000, because we almost never actually give folks the maximum of what they request.
One other thing I feel like I have to mention is that because it is the city, we require, it has to be 18 plus applying. So high school's tricky because that creates a disparity issue of not everybody in high school is 18.
Right.
So I think we need to be careful promoting that too much. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but because we are a government, we have to, they have to fill out the proper paperwork, they have to do the taxes and everything else. So we limit it to adults.
Even for $500, you have to fill out a tax? Really?
It's the government.
And the wording, I believe, on the mini grants was like, that would help you sustain your practice. So it was a piece of equipment to help you sustain. And maybe it wasn't a new, like, it could be new, but like, if you were a newer, younger artist, and I work with high school, so I want them all to apply, but I didn't know if that fit into it. Maybe that's for a whole nother discussion, but I thought it was to keep your practice sustaining, like.
D.B. Smith, that might be to encourage folks to apply who are already like,
In that process.
yeah, not necessarily like a new thing they want to undertake. I mean, that might be one of those things. I feel like sometimes the guidelines on grants are there not necessarily purely as a restriction, but because realistically give people a good idea of, are they a good candidate for, are they likely to actually receive the grant if they apply? And the other thing, I do think, I just wanted to actually echo what Marla said about with the schedule. If the TGT grant process happens before our grant process, I do think that is actually going to have some positive ramifications as far as, especially the event-focused folks going to the TGT grant first, because they're a sharp bunch and they know how to write a grant.
And a lot of them won't make it because there's $35,000 less in that
Yeah.
pool. So I think having this afterwards makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, for some reason I can't find the 2023 guidelines.
That feels like a big hit for the TGT.
So I'll have to look at that. But basically, you're saying stick to what we did last year, which included, at that point, we said we would dedicate at least 5 mini grants. You ended up doing 6. So I'll do that.
Do you want us to vote on it, Porter?
I'm just wondering, should you vote on it tonight based on what you've said? Actually, that's probably easier. So increase the amount to $10,000 from $8,000, do the budget changes, and then separate the timeline for the mini grant. The mini grants are becoming your own sort of mini program, that's interesting how I might just separate it out entirely. And then we can handle that separately and then keep the other grants and keep the $500 plus 5 dedicated. So that would be what, $2,500 for mini grants.
D.B. Smith, Porter obviously is looking at me, but also but it's a question for the room. So is everyone okay with that? I mean, you'd asked about the maximum amount, 8,000, 10,000. I'm curious if you still.
I mean, as long as we have some leeway with it. and we're not required to give everybody who asks for $10,000, $10,000.
No.
Yeah.
And we typically
I
don't.
just don't want us to feel beholden to.
If only we could.
Yeah, I know, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we are free to allocate, award or recommend that the city awards an amount to folks, however, whatever percentage. And yeah, like this year that the porter was showing, I think the maximum we gave anybody was like 87% of the total.
No, 80%.
80?
So the top 5 were given 80.
80%.
And again, this was unusual because it was coming out of COVID. We're really trying to
Sure.
give money to everybody.
Whereas last year, I think we gave a handful. We gave maybe like the top 4. We actually did do 100% of the requests, and then I think it went down to 75, and then
It was like
60.
Busker Festival,
it was
and, you know,
stereotyped.
the staples that already
Yeah.
can operate on a smaller budget
And
and have proven to
I would
do
also
so.
say, I think the year before, I think we actually made the maximum 15,000. And then we later decided that was not a good idea
Okay.
going forward. So we went back to 10.
I completely missed the
That's what I
Belgian
saw
waffle
something where
ride.
somebody got
I
15,000.
don't know if it happened. Did the Belgian waffle ride?
No,
Yeah.
it didn't oh, no, wait a minute, I take it back. Last year it did happen because that was the one that there was an issue about male,
Categories.
female. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then they haven't done it,
That's what
they
it was.
pulled out now.
I have nothing else to say about the Belgian waffle ride.
Same.
It's like when you have 15 questions, you might as well have 0 questions.
So just as before, there's always room for more discussion, but if not, I think I'm looking for a motion to approve these updated guidelines with the equity and inclusion component and the environmental sustainability component, but revising the total, the maximum request back up to 10,000, considering the reallocation of $13,000 to the community arts grants that we approved earlier. And then to ask Porter to look into the possibility of taking the 5 $500 mini grants and either breaking that off into its own separate thing, or at least having maybe the review date separately. And then also, I guess, mentioning that we would like to have this after the TGT grants, but I think that's all the stuff we touched on. So
Yeah.
if anybody has a motion on those points, I will entertain it.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Marlo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. I will now do a roll call vote, starting with Marlo,
Approve.
and then Alicia,
Approve.
and then Monique,
I approve.
and then Kelly,
Approve?
and then Matthew.
Approve.
And I shall also approve. We shall pass that very wordy motion unanimous.
I liked it.
And then that's the last thing on our agenda, but we do have an update that we wanted to touch on regarding, no question?
Go ahead.
We have an update from Porter regarding our potential regular monthly meeting time. Obviously, this is the normal Wednesday meeting, but we had talked about shifting stuff.
So you all said that you would prefer to meet the first Wednesday of the month, if possible.
Yes.
I reached out to the aviation board, who typically that's the night that they've had. They had not decided that, except they did have their meeting last week, and they decided that they want to stay there.
Darn them.
So your second thought was just to stick to this.
Yeah.
So if that's amenable,
Smith, I think we did also discuss, sticking to this day, but maybe shifting earlier in the day, or is that?
I'm the problem there.
Okay, yeah.
Because I have sister cities before this meeting, so,
And you're not available until?
Sister Cities ends at 7, but then I gotta get from there to here and then get set up and stuff. So I could conceivably be here shortly after 7, but 7:30 is just easier for me.
And we
That
can't
said-
do a different day.
Well, you could do the third Wednesday or the
No, I
fourth
meant, like-
Wednesday.
Tuesday. I
Oh, yeah.
remember
I'm like, I can't do Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, Mondays, Thursdays. No flexibility there.
Wednesdays?
In
are-
order to get to the first week of the month.
If you're just, everyone, you're looking at me. I can't, I will say I typically don't do meetings on Thursdays because it is my first studio day of the week, and I have kept it that way for 10 years, and I'm pretty strong to it. So I will if that's what everyone wants to do, but I feel like if you're looking at me, Wednesdays have been great.
I'm okay
So-
with third Wednesday. Is third Wednesday is problematic at all?
I just think we decided that going so far into the month doesn't give us time to talk about things we need to talk about within the month. It feels like we don't have time to put action into those things when we're coming in.
Well, especially just through the end of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because that puts us into Thanksgiving, that puts us close to Christmas
Yeah.
and all the other holidays in between. So, you know,
Should we just stick second Wednesday?
Tammy
Let's
Smith,
see, who's on
I certainly don't have any real objection to
Either.
this date and time.
yeah, that's fine with me.
I'll just be flexible and not say anything. How about that? I'll be part of the solution.
Here.
I'll show up.
There's often events on Thursday, so that's a good day to have off too.
Porter, would it be easy for you to look and see if there's anything else scheduled for Monday, Tuesday,
That's what I'm doing here.
Friday and the first?
So
first
just,
week?
you know, using this as a template, so to speak. Tuesdays are out, the
Yeah.
first 3 Tuesdays, because that's
Oh,
city commission.
Sure, yes, that makes sense.
You could do the 4th Tuesday.
Oh, yeah,
And
that.
none of us would be.
You guys are gonna need to leave.
Whoops. Okay, the Parks and Recreation Board is the second Monday. And then, so the first Monday appears to be open, well, let's see, what was this? I think they meet during the day.
First Mondays, you tend to run into 3-day weekend holidays 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay, so that's, I mean, it's possible, and it looks like the 4th Monday's typically open. Tuesdays, the first 3 Tuesdays would be out, and then you could only do the 4th Tuesday.
So I guess we're.
So Wednesdays,
Wednesday at
Our day chosen
7:30.
For us. Second Thursday.
Which seems
second
to work for all of
Wednesdays.
us, right?
they meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We're
can live with
here.
it anyway.
So
Sorry to
actually,
be a
so the affordable,
I have multiple jobs,
No, I get
multiple
it, I get
things.
it.
Affordable Housing Advisory Board meets in the morning. So that's the 16th. So I think you could do the evening of the 16th, and then you could meet at like 5:30 or something.
Tammy Smith, so it's later in
So
the
that's
month.
the third Wednesday.
Seems like a preference.
But you're in October.
Well, I'm just looking at what has been.
Oh, okay.
Because keep in mind that all the boards and commissions are trying to figure this out, so I can't guarantee anything.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we're kind of here because that's what it's been, so.
So we should hang on to this day.
Why is there a picture of my house? So in awe.
What?
There's, the main picture is of my house, well, the house I rent. Keep going, keep going. That's my front porch. Hi. There was a concert on it many years ago, but it's so funny.
That is hilarious.
We're spying on you.
We have a little free library that matches our house, so maybe that's why,
That's
but you
cute.
can't see it.
All right, so where are we? It sounds like we keep coming back to staying as is.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like staying as is.
Is that, okay. That makes my life easier, so. just wanna
Obviously,
Make sure we talk that through. so
Tim
we'll
is not
stay.
here, so I mean, it's possible that, I mean, we'll have to.
Well, he's always made our meetings, so
Yeah,
presumably
it's
he's
true.
okay with it as well. And we can reopen that event, I mean, we can actually wait and see where everybody else settles in a few months and say, okay, let's revisit this. So that's up to you guys. Okay. Cool.
I agree. That is the last thing on the agenda, except for, I mean, usually we have a miscellaneous section. If anybody has an event or something that they want to shout out right now, I'd say go for it before we do adjournment.
I did want to ask if you could say the details for Tim's event at the bank again.
Oh, yeah.
A great
I can tell you the
question.
details.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So it's at Landmark Bank on 6th Street. I don't know the exact address. For paper artists, I think the name of it is A Waltz with Paper. It opens October 18th, it's Friday. I believe it's 5 to 7. Might want to double check the times.
I think you're right.
But it's Angie Pickman, Cassidy Caranta, thank you, and Liza McMahon and myself. And so it'll be up until middle of December, I believe.
Liza McKinn.
Thank you, see?
That's
I
okay.
need- I
You're
need-
close.
Please.
You got the Mac in
I
there.
got the, okay, please. I want to make sure I'm saying everyone's name right.
Oh, that's great. That's a great group. Very cool. And then the show's open for a while, because I'm actually out that weekend, out of town for my wife's birthday, but I'd like to get over there. Is that over on 6th Street?
Yeah, it's,
Six in Monterey.
Almost near Dillon's?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, because they have a nice sculpture out in front. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I think it's great that he does that, and Tim obviously is really passionate
Beautiful
about
light in
this.
that.
Yeah, very cool.
Deanna B. Smith, does anybody else have anything else they want to share?
I do. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I don't.
I just wanted to give Blanca Harada a big shout out because if you all have time, well, all the shows at the Art Center are always great, but it's honestly, I'm really amazed by one in the middle gallery, and I believe it's called, it's in Spanish, and my Spanish is not great, but I think it translates to fire, form, and culture, if I'm correct.
Very good.
I think it's up for a month or so, and it's beautiful. It's Latin identifying artists, and it's a lot of sculpture, and it makes me really happy. And it's worth looking. All the art, you got Marshall Maude, and I forget who's in the front. Bottles.
Bottles. Yep.
Yeah, I saw
So,
that in the window today.
But I think that the show's really amazing.
we were gonna stop in, but we had a 2.5-year-old and went, no.
All right, great, and that's up through the month, or?
I believe, yeah, it just had an opening, so I imagine it's up for at least.
I think till November, and they're doing art talks. So Marshall is going on Thursday at 7,
Great.
and then Blanca's is October 16th, I think.
All right, great. I usually don't ever mention, Deanna B. Smith, I'll mention, my band plays shows occasionally, and I never really mention them, but at the end of the month, on the 24th, at the Bottleneck here in Lawrence, we'll be playing a show with a band called Shoo Shoo from California. I've been a fan of Shoo Shoo for a long time. Do you know Shoo Shoo? Yeah, Shoo Shoo's great. So, if y'all want to see me in a different context, I'll be doing that.
How do you spell shoo shoo?
It's XIU space XIU.
And what's the name of your band?
My band's called Ebony Tusks.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
But if nobody else has any other comments or anything, I will, as always, look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn has been motioned. Can I get a second? All right, great. We don't have to vote on that one. So we will meet back here in the same time, the same place. I believe it's, what is the next date? Is November 11th? Is that the next one? It's not on my little thing.
November 13th.
13th.
Lucky
We'll be
13th.
here. So thank you all for being here and volunteering your time. Thank you, Porter. Thank you, Kurt. Kurt over in the corner.
Thank you, Kurt.
And see y'all next time.